Welcome everyone to Gems from the Wisdom Traditions, a conversation circle sponsored every Saturday afternoon by Still and Moving Center. This is a time for us to come together and share our collective wisdom from whichever path you might have taken to get you to where you are today. We know that you have something valuable to share with all of us. We're going to start with a quote from the back of our Still and Moving Center Almanac. The theme for the year is Light on the Path, and we have a quote to that effect from the back of the almanac that Margaret is going to share with us. Margaret?
Growing luminous. On the mystic path, we create our own light, and at first we struggle blind and baffled, seeing nothing, hearing nothing, unable to think, unable to imagine. We seem deserted by dream, vision, or inspiration, and our meditation barren altogether. But let us persist through weeks or months, and sooner or later that stupor disappears. Our faculties readjust themselves and do the work we will them to do. Never did they do their work so well. The dark caverns of the brain begin to grow luminous. We are creating our own light. George William Russell.
All right. Thank you so much. Let me welcome today our presenter, Malia Helela, our Kumuhula at Still and Moving Center, who has been by my side since before we opened, the only person who has stayed with Still and Moving for the last 14 years, amazingly. But she's one of these people who sticks to things. She began learning hula when she was a young girl, and has through thick and thin, with the encouragement of her parents, persisted onward. She graduated at the unlikely age of 24 as a kumuhula when her own kumuhula was about to pass from cancer. And she has continued her hula halau ever since that time. We've been very fortunate that she has brought the activities of her halau, her school of hula, and the different traditional arts of hula connected with hula to Still and Moving Center. She is also a lifetime person who has done massage on people ever since she was a child even. And she is a licensed therapist. She not only practices lomi lomi Hawaiian massage, but she also trains others in that massage technique. She is somebody who has studied extensively in all of the different movement modalities that we've offered at Still and Moving Center from many different corners of the world. And I have watched her as she's included various I would say kind of mindsets as well as techniques from these different movement modalities, allowing her to go deeper and deeper into her own practice of hula. I very, very warmly welcome Malia Helela to speak on our topic of today, which is perceiving the invisible. Perceiving the invisible. Malia, could you take us away?
Aloha mai kako. Aloha everybody. So wonderful to see some familiar faces, and aloha, welcome to those who we haven't had a chance to meet. I'd love to begin with an oli that I learned when I was just a little girl. This may have been the first one that I ever learned, and it is simply the aloha chant. And so this will be part of an answer to a question I have, which is, how do we define things? And this chant is just one way of partially defining aloha as kindness, unity, grace, humility, and patience. And so I invite you to take a little bit more of a comfortable seat. Let's take a breath together. Hanumai, Hanuaku. Akahaye na Hawaii. Lo kahia kulike. Olu olu kamana o. Ha'a ha'a ko kulana. Ahonuia lana kila. Aloha e, aloha e, aloha e. I'm going to begin by sharing my screen, and this is a series of quotes. It's actually one piece that is often quoted in these three distinct pieces, and these three statements have formed such a foundation for my perception of the world. The first is, you must remember, never cease to act because you fear you may fail. My personal favorite, the way to lose any earthly kingdom is to be inflexible, intolerant, and prejudicial. Another way is to be too flexible, tolerant of too many wrongs, and without judgment at all. It is a razor's edge. It is the width of a blade of peely grass. And from this week's quotes from the Almanac, we have, to gain the kingdom of heaven is to hear what is not said, to see what cannot be seen, and to know the unknowable, which is, or that is, aloha. And so as we step into this discussion, this open space to really consider what is it to perceive and what is the invisible, I wanted to share this wonderful quote from Queen Liliuokalani. And let me just adjust this one quick second here. But over on the right side, we see that she says the Hawaiian people have been from time immemorial lovers of poetry and music, and have been apt in improvising historic poems, songs of love, and chants of worship, so that praises of the living or wails of the dead were with them, but the natural expression of their feelings. And so I have the lyrics here to the Queen's Prayer. She originally called it Kapuliakahaku, a prayer to God, but most people know it today as the Queen's Prayer. And this mele is significant in that she composed it while she was imprisoned in Iolani Palace. And so this was a few years after the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom. There were people who were mobilizing to try and restore the queen to her throne. It was not successful, and as part of the trial, the queen was charged guilty of treason, or misprision of treason, meaning she knew, but she didn't turn in the people who were working to restore the kingdom. And so she was imprisoned, and while she was in isolation for a long time, but for the better part of a year, this is one of the things that she turned to express herself and her feelings. And here in the third verse, we have a very important and I think very interesting window into her perception. It says, Mainana ino ino, naheva o kanaka, behold not with malevolence the sins of man, aka e hui kala, amae ma'eno, but forgive and cleanse. And so even in her time of need and desperation and imprisonment, she was still looking towards forgiving as a means of forgiveness as a means of cleansing. And so I do want to actually share, I probably could sing it, but instead I am going to share this one recording that I've fallen in love with. It's by Ku'ule Music. And so I invite you just to follow along with the lyrics as we listen to this song. It's only about a minute and a half. Mahalo nui, everybody. I think we could all take a breath together. So hanumai, breathing in, hanuaku, exhale. And so I looked up the definition of perceive, to perceive, perception, and that is generally to take in information and to find meaning. And this word here, an expression, this natural expression, we have infinite ways of expressing our way of finding meaning. And here we see a photo of Queen Liliuokalani and her royal seal. And so if we look here in this top part of the circle, we see the word onipa'a. And onipa'a is such an interesting word because if we look at the actual definition of the word literally, oni is movement, it's to move, and pa'a is to be secure, steadfast, fixed. And so it's still in moving, really. And as a motto for the queen, to be able to find steadfastness, to be firm, resolute, and determined. In my definition, to move around until you find your fit. I think that she was able to share and express what I'll now start talking about as legacy. And I think this is something that we can all consider. I feel my dad speaking through me. We all have stories to share about how we became who we are. We have stories to share about our family. These are all legacies that we have uniquely, individually. Each one of us has a legacy that we get to curate. And so one of the things that Queen Liliuokalani did, also while she was imprisoned and later as well when she spent time in Washington, she did a translation of the Kumulipo, which is a Hawaiian creation chant, thousands and thousands of lines long. And I thought it was really interesting to read in her words, in her introduction, her why. And she doesn't use the word legacy, but I really believe that what she was trying to give forward was a legacy for her people. And so she begins with, there are several reasons for the publication of this work, the translation of which pleasantly employed me while imprisoned by the present rulers of Hawaii. It will be to my friends a souvenir of that part of my own life, and possibly it may also be of value to genealogists and scientific men of a few societies to which a copy will be forwarded. I imagine many of these visited by King Kalakaua in his travels. The folklore or traditions of an Aboriginal people have of late years been considered of inestimable value. Language itself changes, and there are terms and allusions herein to the natural history of Hawaii, which might be forgotten in future years without some such history as this to preserve them to posterity. And so as we take what we learn, as the Queen took many things that she learned and started to pay them forward and to give them as a gift to the future, I think that we may start to come around to understand what it means to perceive the invisible. I think that one question could be, how do we perceive? Whether that's sight or smell or sound, some of these more subtle senses like sensing heat and cold and navigating poles. There are many ways that we perceive. But as I was preparing for this presentation, what came forward to me was the question of why. Why do we perceive? More specifically, for what purpose? And so in Queen Liliuokalani's autobiography, we have an incredible lens. We have a small window into her personal perceptions of the events of her life. And this quote is very powerful because she acknowledges, she says, I could not turn back the time for political change, but there is still time to save our heritage. And she did that in so many ways. I think as any one of us start to delve into Queen Liliuokalani and her legacy, there are so many things that she did. And I didn't have a chance to put it together into this slideshow, but I'm just going to pop out of this share to share with you that she created a savings bank for women. And this is at a time where men or women weren't able to own property. In many areas of the world, they couldn't have a bank account for, for some of us into our day. But she had Liliuokalani Savings Bank for Women, established here 5 years before she became queen. So this woman, as a princess, was already looking to secure, just the well-being of the women and children. It was so successful that they started another one in Hilo that was not actually called a bank. It was called a women's lending group. It was a hui, it was a gathering, and it was a place where pen and ink in ledgers, women would regularly deposit $5 a month into this larger account and then would be able to withdraw as they needed. And so in many big and small ways, the queen was securing a legacy not just for her and for her name. She wasn't building a pyramid just for a symbol. Not saying that pyramids are symbolic, but I'm saying that she was creating a legacy that has continued to provide in very, very real ways for all the people of Hawaii. And I think all people who get to learn her story. Is quite remarkable. Her trust, the Queen Liliuokalani Trust, continues to serve children, families, particularly children who have lost their parents. Her legacy is really quite remarkable. And so I could go on and on, but I do want to bring it back to this idea of perceiving the invisible. And in the quote for the week about to see the unseen, to know the unknowable, that is aloha, I thought we could kind of take a collective look into the definition of aloha. So I did a screenshot because I thought it was pretty neat to see. There is a website, vehevehe.org, where you can choose. This is a combined Hawaiian dictionary tab. And so these are the different dictionaries that are all going into helping us to define aloha. And look at how many things, how many aspects of aloha there are for us to consider. And so I'm going to come out of here once again because I really was thinking about how we can define our perceptions, and maybe aloha could be one example of that invisible for the theme of the week. Maybe aloha is that invisible thing that is maybe impossible to define. I think that it is indefinable, and yet it's infinitely, infinitely expressible. And so as the Queen shared, not just Hawaiian people, but all people, we are born to express. We all come into the world seeking to perceive, right? What are these things around me? Who are the people around me? Who are my networks? We gain and we grow in our understanding. And I think an important part might be that indefinable piece, that piece that lets us continue to grow and seek. And I'm going to come to a close with this formal part just by sharing some research into the emotion of awe. The emotion of awe is sometimes difficult to define. It is seen as an internal emotion because when most people are feeling awe, they tend to lower the head, the brow might start to knit. And this one researcher, she took it up as her area of study, and she defined it as the brain, the consciousness trying to comprehend and understand something that is incomprehensible. And so looking at a little baby's toes, baby feet, or the Grand Canyon or Waimea Canyon, and just knowing we can't ever really comprehend it, but we want to try, we aspire to understand, and that is awe. And it is such an incredible, incredible human quality and human emotion that I certainly felt so many times as I was preparing for this presentation today. Thank you again so much, everybody, for joining. I invite, let's see, we have quite a few people. I don't want to point out anybody, I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable, but I do welcome any thoughts on this topic. We have perceiving the invisible. You can share on perceptions, on something that is invisible but perceivable, legacy, expression, lots of points to connect to here. And so I welcome any sharing on the topic.
As I was listening to you, the question that came to my mind is whether when one is experiencing this feeling of aloha in particular, and it's towards someone that maybe we don't know, it's towards someone that maybe has a very fierce look or a very desperate look or a very ragged look, and still we're feeling this aloha. Do you have the feeling that that is perceiving something of the invisible of that human being?
That's
And
an
that's for
excellent
everybody.
question. Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. And my mind turns to a Catholic church that I visited with mom in Arizona. And inscribed in the dome of this church, it said, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a great battle." And so I think part of love is understanding that we don't know what somebody's going through. Maybe that's part of that, like, imperceivable thing. Like, we can never understand somebody else's experience, and yet we can certainly express kindness and understanding and sympathy, if not empathy. Another thought is from just Hawaiian tradition, understanding that the divine will come down and dwell here in the living. And so a plant might be a manifestation of a deity. We might meet somebody. There's so many stories about that white-haired old lady with her white dog. Might be Pele. You don't want to, pass her by. And so we do acknowledge that the divine dwells in all of us, and sometimes a specific divinity might dwell in somebody and we don't know. And so we don't just treat somebody ideally, we don't just treat each other as humans, we treat each other as divine. And that's, like, I think, an elevation of care that I aspire to. I don't always make it. And yes, mom put in the chat. Thank you, mom. It was St. Maria Goretti Church in Arizona.
Oh, Carolyn, could you unmute?
There we go.
Thank you.
Could we use the word feeling the invisible instead of perceiving? It just struck me.
Cool question.
That's a great question. And I think it does come down to that perception and how do we make sense of information that we get in. And so I would imagine we would have to define what is sense and what is feel. Could you maybe share a little bit more about what you're looking for?
Well, it does seem that the invisible does have make itself known by doing something that we can feel. And it does translate into perceiving, but even if it's a kind of light or sound, it does convey itself through feelings that and we take that very seriously because we're materialists. And so it's just a suggestion or a question.
Mm-hmm. That's a wonderful, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think we come back to what I was really dwelling on when I was preparing this, and it's that our legacies are highly individual things. And I think it falls to each of us to self study, to find the things that make sense to us. And if it is our perception, for example, I just bought my family tickets to Rent to go watch together on my birthday. And I was listening to the soundtrack. I literally got chills and I cried. I felt a palpable, measurable change in my body from this invisible thing, which is music and poetry. And so I think that what a wonderful thing that we all get to explore, right? Yeah, how we feel, how we sense, how we experience the invisible. That could be a whole another hour of discussion, but thank you. Thank you, Carolyn. Let's see, I think I had Kayolena's hand up. Yeah, everyone, if you would like to just maybe put your hand up, and then that's an easy way if you'd like to share. But Kayolena, aloha.
Hi, aloha kaua, aloha kako. What you were saying about, you know, approaching each person as divine is so core to Buddhism that, you know, all sentient beings have Buddha nature. And when you meet someone, you're meeting the Buddha. And it applies not only to human beings, but to all sentient beings, including our friends, the animals, and, you know, plants and everything. I guess plants are not sentient, but, you know, all kinds of creatures, which is why I have a really hard time smushing snails because, you know, they're Buddhas and they're adorable and they're amazing little sentient beings. But anyway, what I was thinking about was, for me, perceiving the invisible and knowing the unknowable and it's interesting that you say we can express that because so many times in hula I have this deep, complex feeling or sense or perception, for example, of your hula about Liliuokalani and the different layers of meaning in it and the depth of it and um, the whole thing is just beyond my ability to express in words, right? So to me, it's sort of like the invisible and unknowable. We know, we understand, we get it, but there are no words.
Thank you. Actually, those were really wonderful words, contrary to what you just said. And it's interesting to consider, yeah, that Buddha nature, maybe is there some alignment to the aloha spirit with acknowledging that? I think that is a religion-based not religion, but like a faith-based understanding of that. And I just want to bring forward, before we move to Maheshi, the idea that aloha, particularly aloha, I think it's actually quite place-based. In that I believe that aloha springs directly from this land and what's unique about Hawaii. Because there's care, there's esteem, there is compassion, there's a lot of different things that humans share around the world, right? Humanity shares many things. And yet here in Hawaii, we have such a unique place in the middle of the Pacific. Anybody who comes here to this day, even on an airplane, is going to journey. They're going to have to confront time spent journeying. And when everybody arrives here, as we dwell here, there are the trade winds that have a very unique relationship here. We have a fringing reef. We have abundant water. We have snow and lava together on the same island. And so I think that aloha, maybe, in my understanding, has a very place-based
I think too in
influence.
Hawaiian culture, I can't think of any other culture where that aloha is based on sharing your breath, sharing air, sharing space,
Mhm.
breathing together.
Yes, yes. The Hawaiian embrace. Some people, they go forehead to forehead. Some people bump noses. But the most intimate are you press the forehead and the nose together, face to face, and you breathe in. That is quite an intimate moment. And I think even more so when you open eyes and look at one another. I think if there is a society or a culture that is comfortable with that level of intimacy, Yeah, that's another layer to aloha. Interesting. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Kaiolana. And Maheshi, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Aloha.
Yes, you are. Thank you. Um, I was thinking of the awe and the perceiving. And perceiving is from the senses. I've recently started taking awe walks, and it's just to become aware of like the middle of the city. In the middle of the city, this beautiful red flower grows out of the concrete. And it's like, wow, nature will not be stopped no matter what's around it. And, it's perceiving, for me, perceiving is feeling. It's not anything that can be thought about. It's not the intellect. And it's just a feeling of awe, a feeling of wonderment. And for me, that's being in the space of the divine. Like, that is what the divine is. And yeah, Hawaii, I've been in Hawaii 26 years. I spent 19 on the Big Island. So I've been here on Oahu 6 years. And this is the only place that you can say aloha and it softens whatever's been going on before that. You get on the bus and you say aloha, and the bus driver before that might have been, and now they're like, oh. It for me, it seems to have a tendency to soften, and that's what I feel like these islands do. They soften everyone who comes here, and if you don't soften, you get kicked out. Thank you.
That's a beautiful sharing. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sure everyone like me is having all these side thoughts popping out. But number one, this idea that nature will not be stopped has me wondering, maybe aloha is a force of nature. Maybe aloha is that force of nature. And I think that one aspect of aloha that I think you allude to, even if you didn't name it, is this idea or this feeling of humility. I think that softening, that humbleness, that acknowledging the divinity of another, acknowledging that we don't always know what the other person is experiencing, and that we are inclined to defer, right? To give compassion and kindness. I think that there's a thread of humility it does soften. I just softened myself. So yeah, let's once again, everyone, let's take a nice deep breath in. Hanumai. Hanuaku. Sharing breath in this virtual space. Thank you. Thank you so much, Maheshi. And Charmaine, it is so great to see you. Aloha.
Oh, hi. Your voice is so beautiful. Truly beautiful. I came to this because the perceiving the invisible is so rich with multiple meanings, of what does that mean? And I keep thinking, I work with a lot of trauma here. And so it's almost impossible, I think, for people to perceive the invisible when you're in trauma, because in many ways you're blind. You're in the dark, right? And yet, I think perceiving the invisible, if we allow ourselves, can also loosen the ropes that tie one to trauma. Do you know what I mean? It's like this thing that happens. if you breathe, or even if you say aloha or something, it can open you up to new possibilities. But I'm finding that our big problem as a species is that maybe we can't perceive the invisible and therefore are limited in how we live. Do you know what I mean, Malia?
I do.
That
I do.
because that perceiving the invisible is that sense of awe. You know, that, and the invisible becomes visible, right? When we have, it becomes clear. We see something we didn't see before, right? But I believe that maybe our big challenge is to get to a place that we can perceive the invisible, and maybe some of our common, communal challenges might change. Do you know what I mean? For the better.
Hmm. Yeah, there's so many layers to this, and thank you so much for bringing that forward. Just this perspective of what happens when we have layers of experience that might inhibit us, whether it's trauma, whether it is um, way more kids growing up on devices, right? There are all of these shifts in how
Right.
we are living that maybe I wonder if it's not really anything different than other times in humanity. It's just a little bit, it's just a different example. Um, I'm thinking of the allegory of the cave, right? The prisoners
Right.
who are shackled, looking at the shadows from the fire,
Right.
thinking that is real. And yet the person outside the cave is like, no, 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 that's not real. But to the person who is looking at those, has only ever seen the shadows,
Right.
why is that not real to them? It's just layers of understanding. And I think that is the gift of growing and growing older, is that we have a wider pool of experience to understand. And I think that is the inestimable value of stories and legends and groups and sharing like a space like this. I may not have, I will not have ever put the words together that you have, those of you that have shared. I would never think to do it in that way. And yet, this space just kind of teases our ability to hold understanding a little bit better. And maybe, I know I'm really fascinated by emotions, and some newer research into emotions show that if you can name and define that emotion a little bit more clearly, your body has a means of de escalating. Like understanding if this is, resentment versus grief versus disappointment. If we can clarify these nuances of emotion, then our brains can actually let down whatever hormones we need. And
Right.
I think as we grow in our understanding and being able to recognize, number one, and at the same time recognize that we can't really ever understand it, though we can try.
Right. Right.
But bless you for your work. Thank you so much. Working with people who have experienced trauma is medicine for the world. It really is. So thank you. Thank you. Let's see, I've got Kaiolana's hand up again, and then please, everybody, I know we're kind of doing a lot of discussion today, and I do encourage, if you have a thought, just put your hand up. It can just be a small thought. It doesn't have to be very long, but I would love to hear from more of you. But go ahead, Kaiolana, since you
Yeah, I
have your
know
hand
I've
up.
already had a turn and I don't want to hog everybody else's turn, but I was just thinking about the perfect example of a knowledge of the unknowable, the perceiving of the invisible, and the undefinable that is uniquely Hawaiian is aloha aina. Aloha aina, what is it? How do you define it? And yet we feel it, we know what it is. And also for me, perceiving the invisible is often kind of a spiritual, it's kind of a spiritual, almost ESP kind of experience, because it's like you just feel like this is not the right time to enter the forest, right? Or you feel the breeze and you know your ancestors there with you, right? And it's invisible. You can't see the wind, right? But you feel it and you know it. But yeah, just the idea of aloha aina is so like no words, right? It's so perfect example of what we're talking about, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And this isn't, I think, just a Hawaiian understanding. I think of Legends of King Arthur. The land and the king are one. The land and the king are one. The health of our leaders and our, oh my gosh, if we link the health of our leaders to the status and the, you know, what it says about our societies, we have a lot of healing ahead of us, a lot of medicine that we need. But particularly in Hawaii, a very, very intimate understanding that we are family members. We are related to the land. Our elder brother, the brother before the first human being, was a kalo. And so we look at plants as maybe sentient. I think they're sentient. Sentient siblings and family members, and seeing that relation between health of the land and health of the people, which really I think opens up some beautiful opportunities then for us to tend. Can we then take care of a place? Can we pick up some trash? Can we take away some weeds? Can we water? Can we fertilize? Can we do something, right, that's even outside of ourselves, and see that we can still maybe get a little bit of that life force energy from tending to the land? Maybe we can catch some of that ourselves. I know, so many questions today. Abia Maheshi, we'll go back to you.
I think what Pat Oleno is saying, I mean, I don't know anywhere else in any other land that the motto is the life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. That's, that's pretty amazing. And we've gotten so far away from that integrity. You know, being in truth of who we are. And for me, the invisible is more full than what we look at every day. It's full of life and full of energy, and it's constantly shifting. I mean, just go sit down by the water and watch it, the waves hit up against the rocks, and there's all these feelings that come up. And so, but I want to say also too, when you were talking about emotions, I have found that, I used to think in one of the 12-step programs, God, take away all these defects of character. I go, okay, it's gone now. I'm better. I'm a better person. But I read an understanding, and the word remove means to put space between. And so that's who I am, all of our emotions also have a positive aspect to them, which we forget about. But I have found that when I have a little meltdown and I just look at myself and go, oh, Maheshi, look at where you just went over that piddly little thing. I can start laughing at myself. And then that changes everything. So it's like when I can begin to see these emotions as kind of gifts that God has given to me to experience. It's like, trying on different jackets, see which one I like better than the other. So it opens up things. And I think Hawaii has that propensity to help us to open up more. And maybe it's because we're these tiny little islands in the middle of a vast ocean that helps that to happen. But, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I love that analogy of the jackets, because we may inherit some jackets that don't fit us. We may decide we want to stitch up one just for us. And thank you. Thank you for bringing space into the conversation. It feels so spacious. And one of my favorite formative texts, Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. There's that one about marriage, about let there be space in our togetherness, right? That space piece, quite invisible as well. David, aloha.
Aloha, Malia, and everyone. Thank you so much. I always love hearing your presentations. Trying to put words to the wordless, interesting prospect here. But I was getting this feeling of aloha might be when we connect with, when the separation is gone. It may be an act of kindness. It may be an act of forgiveness. It may be aloha aina, just loving the earth and appreciating it for what it is. Somehow I get the feeling that aloha might be the end of separation to connect. That's what arose for me through the shares so far.
That's really, really compelling. I'm not a quantum physicist, but I did watch What the Bleep Do We Know? When I was pregnant with my twins. I saw it in the old Varsity Theater. I think it was one of the last movies before the theater was torn down. But I was pregnant with these twins, and there was that part about water and how it, so I put my hands on my belly and said, "Oh, I love you so much," and they started kicking. But that's not what I meant to talk about. It was the kind of that understanding that we never really touch each other. There's like, even at the micro level, this force that doesn't ever allow anything to touch. Even my hands together, there's still space and space and space to the smallest little level. So does that mean that nothing is touching, or is everything just completely enmeshed? We're constantly in a state of connectiveness.
And for me, that space is where we create energy that I use for healing.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm not touching, I feel the ions and the energy and put my energy toward your energy. And that's how I do Reiki type of healing. Anyway, I don't want to interrupt because I know Kanevai Olu wants to say something.
Yes, I was going to actually call upon Kahenavai Olu. Those of you may or may not have seen her comment in the chat about duality, right? About what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? And how do they influence each other? Very, very Hawaiian way of thinking of duality. The text that Queen Liliuokalani translated, the Kumulipo, in large part has verse upon verse upon verse of paired things, something of the mountain that is cared for by something of the ocean. These pairs and pairs of duality that allow us to find our center. So I was going to ask if you could share a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I started holding my hands together like Kyolena. I'm like, can I feel those ions? Can I feel those ions? It's so sweet an idea. But I hear a lot of talk about psychology, and I work with a lot of children, and the emotions alone for children can be very big and overwhelming because children need their perceptions to be more concrete. So to the extent that we can fill in that invisibility, that actually reassures them so much. I mean, they think that, dark spaces, they will put something in that dark space, and most of the time it's like a monster, but it can be really scary to just have an emotion without having a story attached. So I wanted to just put stories in the space, and whatever that story is, that it gives us a place to anchor and a place to be attached with. And sometimes emotions can be, well, frankly, misinformed, right? Because basically a panic attack is an emotion that's based on a physical sensation that, oh my gosh, I'm dying, but not really. But, we could act on that, and without any sort of story or narrative or thought behind it, many things can go awry. So I think that I just want to put the thinking with the emotion as like a whole kind of a thing. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think we're almost kind of veering into the realm of paradox. And excuse me, Renee has a a quote that's come along in the almanac a couple of times about how, was it maturity is the ability to handle paradox? Something to that nature, right? Okay, thumbs up. And that I think that there is such value in defining something, right? If there's a dark space or a place that we don't know, we have this unknowing piece, that it can be very, very helpful to go there and understand, turn on the light, get your little monster spray. We had that essential oils and water, they'd spray the monsters, my kids when they're little. And I think that it's really a beautiful thing to also sit in and normalize the not knowing. I'm the kind of person, I want to know it all. I want to be good at everything. I just want it to be perfect all the time. And I think that the times where I am feeling awkward and uncomfortable and insecure, I've learned to really cherish those times because it shows me that I am expanding my comfort zone. I'm growing. We've got neuroplasticity. Things are forming when we are in that state of confusion sometimes. But I think that, yeah, there's that that line of discernment that I think we all need to come to. Like, when do we need to define and like figure out the thing? And when do we need to just allow it to be unknown? We just need to allow the space for the divine, the mystery. And there is a Hawaiian word for that. One of my favorite is aiwaiwa, which is the incomprehensible. Yeah, the incomprehensible, the mysterious, the divine. And as we're able to navigate both, then we have to figure out, okay, when do we need to define it? When do we need to just let it remain a question? Oh, thank you so much, Mohala Kapua. I was just going to say thank you so much for all of your hearts. I see them. I appreciate them. Pedagogy of discomfort of sorts, making sure not to cross, into trauma. And I don't know if there's anybody that can speak to Stoicism and this idea of just normalizing, becoming comfortable with discomfort as a practice. I mean, you don't have to, but I know many of you are at least aware of that idea. Yeah. Yes, Wayao first, and then Stephanie after.
The thought, or it's more of an image that comes to my mind in terms of perceiving the invisible, has to do with softening enough for all of our antenna to be open and aware, able to take in what's there to take in. And that does require safe space for that to happen. And so what can we do to provide ourselves with that safe space so that once again we can open up to taking so much of that richness that's available to us all around?
Yes, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And that makes me think of a training I did in brain compatible dance education, which is that kids and all movers really benefit from having routine, something that they can feel safe and comfortable, and also the novelty. And that is something we see every single time in a NIA class, where we have enough that we can follow and we're encouraged to make it our own. But finding that, just that ability to be safe and grow. Isn't that like ideal for keiki, that they are safe to grow? And I think that's something that we all continue to need and benefit from. So thank you, Renee. And Stephanie, Rosilani, aloha.
Aloha, Kako. I just wanted to add, because this teacher of mine from a distance, Dan Siegel, I brought him up in the chat. He talks about the plane of possibility and being able to reside in this plane of possibility when we are more integrated in ourselves. So more able to sit in the unknown. And so that's what's coming up for me strongly, is that if we are able to be comfortable with sitting in the invisibility, our possibilities really, really open up.
That's I love that, the
Yeah.
plane of possibility.
Yeah.
Much to my mother's discomfort. When I was 21, I took a train trip around America all by myself, and the first couple of days in, I lost my phone. So I was just out in the plane of possibility there. But I had been gifted a book by one of my clients. It was called A Journey of One's Own, and it was a female author who had written about her experiences traveling solo. And she had written about how when you travel with a companion, you have their support, their shared experience is really lovely. And when you travel solo, then you have this infinite plane of possibility, right? That there is just more available when you have that kind of space. And so, yeah, I'm going to add that to my list of mottos. Let's dwell in the plane of possibility. And I know there are many, many hula students here, hula students of mine. I'm sure hula students of practitioners of many different kinds. And you'll probably be able to relate to this. In hula, we have so many areas of the practice, right? We have the beat, the music, the poetry, the imagery, our body sensations. We have projecting forward to the next verse by calling a kahea. We have awareness of each other, dancers in the space. We have so many things that we have available for our attention to go to. And I think that it's a really wonderful space to practice widening that field, right? And it is progressive where we start. And maybe we can only focus on our feet. That's all we have even space to perceive. And then we can add maybe feet and hands. And then we can dance about a rainbow and remember, oh yeah, there was that rainbow I saw driving into class. We can cultivate this ability to just expand our plane or our field of awareness. And ideally, this is moving into my personal philosophy, that we can cultivate the ability to switch easily, lightly, smoothly, with grace between all these many, many points, such that we're not necessarily caught in one perspective, but we can cultivate moving between many, many different perspectives. And I just noticed the time. We've actually gone a couple minutes over. As I look out at all of these faces, all of your names, oh my goodness, every single person who came today, even if you didn't have a chance to unmute and speak, I appreciate you being here. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. And speaking of safe spaces, Renee, thank you so much for providing this space for all of us to just gather and listen and learn and relate. Mahalo nui, everybody.
Thank you so much, Malia. I am going to ask for somebody to give a vote of thanks. I will first let you know that the next couple weeks, we will be taking up the topics of the eyes to see, and that's going to be something that kind of leads the way into later having the tongue to speak and the ears to hear, etc. And then on February 1st, we'll have the topic of body and soul, and February 8th, the topic of life atoms. Everything's alive. So it's our practice to offer anybody who'd like to the opportunity to give thanks to our speaker on behalf of all of us. I know all of us have grateful hearts. And is there someone today who would like to offer a vote of thanks to Kumu Malia? And I'm always happy to do it myself.
We're all putting thanks in the chat.
Oh, well, that's a great place to put it. Yeah. Well, I would like to express aloud my thanks that Malia has been able to pull from so many different sources, deep from within the Hawaiian tradition itself, by referring us back to the 1800s to Queen Liliuokalani, and then her going further back in her translation of the ancient Hawaiian creation myth of the Kumulipo, and then also to, things from modern psychology and science as well as different traditions around the world that have informed her and therefore were able to inform us today. I just am so grateful to all of you for your attention and your sweetness in how you came to this particular session. It was really wonderful. We're always welcome to stay on for a couple minutes afterwards. And I'll just say aloha and mahalo to all of you now. Aloha.
Oh, mahalo nui. And I'll put in the chat my email if you have any thoughts you want to connect later. I welcome. If you want to drop me a line, my email is in the chat.
I want to shout out to Mary.
Yeah.
Good job, Mary. Your kid's awesome.
I just want to say, Malia, thank you for, and Renee, for bringing this together as a community, as we get to share with each other and get to know each other. This is my first time coming to something like this, so maybe you all know each other, but I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You had so much wonderful, so many wonderful insights. I'm going to be carrying that softening quality of aloha with me into the day. Like I'm also a body worker, so I'm a kumu, so I'm looking at all of you. I see the emojis that pop up from Mohala Kapua. I see your shoulders. I see your breathing even. And I witnessed a softening of the group when you had that insight. And so thank you so much. Please come back. Come often. Oh, thank you.
So Renee, will we get emails again like this? So what's happening in February, etc.?
I think that you will all be getting, because you attended this week, you will be getting with many other people an invitation for our following week's talk.
Okay. Thank you.
And
Just
Sharon
wanted
is nodding her head in agreement, and she's in charge of it, so we're in good hands.
Aloha, divine ones. Thank you.
Mahalo nui, everybody. Thank you,
Aloha.
Michael, for coming, and Jean, my hula people. Yay!
Stella's there.
Thank you.
And Phyllis, haven't seen Phyllis in a long time. If you're listening in, much aloha to you. And the
Doris
trees.
made it.
Yay! Thanks for joining, Doris. And Mom.
I'll be
Yeah.
here all the time for you, sweetie. And Renee.
Oh,
And Sharone.
oh,
And Margaret. And everybody.
Yeah, that was very insightful of Kahena Vaiolu to thank Mom, because really I am who I am because of you. So.
Oh, God bless you.
Thank you, Margaret, for leading us off with our quote for the on the back of the almanac. It's always a great way to start it with somebody who has a clear reading voice like that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And I just want to do one quick shout out to Kamakura, Kamakura Hula Ohana. Thank you for joining. All right, everybody. So I will see many of you tomorrow.
bye.
Ahui ho.